What is up, YouTube? So as you know, I did start a new series on this Jeep that I was building for my daughter for her first birthday. Unfortunately, my series got cut short due to some unforeseen circumstances, and every YouTuber's worst nightmare when their footage gets lost. So I have had a failure on one of my drives that I had the footage on, and I could no longer recover it as much as I tried. Making the best out of a bad situation, I'm gonna go over the whole Jeep with you guys and show you exactly what I did and how I did it, basically, and point things out. And obviously, if you guys have questions, you could always message me on YouTube or hit me up on Instagram at MohawkDave555. So here we go. All right, so obviously, as you see in the front, the first thing I did was I picked up these shackles from Home Depot. These were stainless steel little shackles that I got. They were, I think they were like $4 a pop or like $3 a pop. And I color matched them or painted them the same color as I did my whole scheme here. I made these, I think on the first episode that I did, I show how to make these out of plexiglass. They're holding up actually pretty decent on there. I got bolts in the back holding. I drilled holes into it, and I basically made like a little simple stud. I drilled holes in the bumper and just slid it through, and I put washers and bolts in the back, and I'll show that to you on the back over there. The other thing is, this was a hood scoop that I did. This was like a $12 hood scoop on eBay that I essentially channeled down the middle to make it more narrow, and then I cut it down, turned it around so it's put on backwards, and the front of the scoop is actually here in the back, but it came out as one of those JK hoods that you get aftermarket. This is actually window screen, so I had some heavy duty window screen after I cut these holes. I used window screen from the back that I painted also to match, and it seems to be holding up pretty good. We've had things thrown at it, ball hit it. It's holding up pretty good so far. The decal was an eBay decal that I just picked up. Don't remember exactly how much that was. I think it was like a few dollars. So that's basically that. That takes care of the hood. I did take these little trim pieces out and I painted them to match the whole Jeep. The other thing on the front that you see here is basically the Badland Harbor Freight style Fairlead for the winch. Now the winch Fairlead, I picked up just the Fairlead on its own. I don't know if it's still available or not. It was on clearance. I think I paid like $3 or $4 for it. This is basically for an ATV winch for a nylon rope, and I saw it sitting there. I figured it would fit perfect in here, and it actually does. The hook is made out of plexiglass, same exact type of deal that I made the shackle mounts, same exact way. And you can see that she's already hit a couple of obstacles with them, and they're actually holding up fairly well. The front light bars, these are cheap $7 light bars off of eBay. I think these are 7-inch they're called, and they're just simple 12 little volt, very easy to install. I just used the brackets that it comes with and went right to the bumper. I didn't use the 2 factory lights that come with that, with the actual Jeep, because I think they were too bulky. This makes it a lot cleaner look. I also painted the inside bezel here on the fog lights, and I installed eagle eyes in here, and then I did the same exact thing here. I removed the LEDs that come with it, and I installed these 3-watt eagle eyes after I painted the bezel white, and I painted the actual inside piece to match the Jeep. And then I kept the factory halo that was in there, and I ordered these new halos. So these are color changing halos, and I'll show you where I hooked them up and how they look when they're turned on. I removed from the grill in here, it came with this plastic insert that replicates like sort of a grill. I actually plasti dipped the backing black, and I installed an actual like gutter guard type of grill that I painted white. This grill, I think in the previous video I was painting it white. We had some issues with paint adhesion. What I ended up doing is actually quite the process to have this be resilient to everything. I sanded the whole thing, and then I plasti dipped it white because plasti dip seemed to be sticking to the Jeep very well. And then after I did that, I basically shot it with regular flat white paint on top, and it actually is holding up fairly well. We've been hitting some things and it's handling it. All right, so I guess I should probably open the hood and go over the lights, and I'll also throw in probably in a video what the Jeep looks like at night. So here's what's going on under the hood here. So I unplugged the factory speaker that was in here because that noise was freaking annoying every time she turns it on. So I just left it sitting there. I did wire up another battery. So I'm still running 12 volts, but I'm getting much longer runtime on it. And this battery is on eBay, same exact one that comes with it. I think I paid like $12 for it shipped. So that was very easy. I just basically went positive to positive, negative to negative, and then ran it to the original hookup. Lighting, I ended up hooking up directly to the battery, and I set up the switch for it, and that's for the light bars. So I got two separate switches for 3 light bars. 2 light bars come on, the hood light bars come on with 1 switch, and the top light bar comes on with another switch. The halos turn on with the headlights. You can shut them off with the remote. I have the remote here under the hood with Velcro. Very simple. Just had to make a random bracket in here to hold the battery down. You could use anything on that really. I had some, this is from an old TV mount that I had sitting around, and I just used that piece of metal from the bracket and cut it down, and it's holding the battery fairly good. Now, the controller for the LEDs, I have 2 channels that are not used. This is a 4-channel controller, and basically I just hot glued the little IRI right into the grill. You can't notice it from the front, but it's like, get a shot of that, see if I can spot it. It's right here, right in here. So you can't really see it, but when you have the remote in front of the Jeep and you're trying to change the light colors, it works very well. And you can't see it, that's the best part. So everything lighting up front wise, besides the light bars, fog lights, the running lights, headlight, both halos, everything is hooked up directly to where the wires were for the factory headlights. So it's very simple. Yeah, you can't get any easier. There's no any sort of craziness going on. Here on the bumper, I ran the studs, which again I ordered the bolts on eBay because they were super cheap, and I will make sure I give you the right size because I don't remember exactly what size they are. I have a little baggie. So these are the bolts that I used for the wheels and all the studs, and I think this was 200 pieces, or yeah, I think it was 200 pieces. So these are M5 6mm screws, stainless steel, and they were super cheap on eBay. I don't even remember. I think I got them for like 20 something bucks for all 200 of them, which wasn't too bad. All right, so I'm gonna turn the lights on right now, and as you see, it turns on the factory, the bezel lights, and then it also turns the taillights on. It turns on the rock lights underneath, and I'll talk a little bit about those later. And there you go. The fog lights, the halos, and the headlights are all on at the same time. So basically on the remote I could turn those halos off, and we're left with basically the factory halo in there and that Eagle Eye LED. Now, turning it on, again, I could change and set any color, any pace, any fade, whatever the speed is. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this whole LED thing because everybody and everything has these color changing LEDs now. Okay, so speaking of the Eagle Eyes, so this is what I'm running for the headlights, fog lights, rock lights. I didn't do this in the taillights because I didn't want the taillights to be obnoxiously bright. These are fairly bright. And then what I did for the rock lights, since this comes with like a projector style lens on it, I just took that lens off, popped it off, and it's actually glued on here, so I just popped it off, and we're using just the exposed LED. And then what I did on top was I literally sprayed clear coat spray paint on top just so the water doesn't affect it if it gets splashed on there, because she does go through puddles and stuff like that with the Jeep. So these are the halos that I got. These are the color changing RGB halos. These are 70 millimeter. It says right here on the back that they're 70 millimeter. I bought them individually. I bought 4 of them just in case we have one that we screw up. So we had extras or whatnot, and these were, again, I think it was like $5 or $10, somewhere in that price range for those. And then here is the controller for the RGB control. I used basically something like this. I had a couple laying around. It's basically a 4-channel. You could probably hook it up to a 2-channel or whatever, or even a single one if you want to splice the wires. But these were so easy to just plug in. It comes with a remote. Here's a little receiver that I used, and I'm sure if you type in RGB control box on eBay with an infrared remote control for 12 volt or whatever, here's the little spec, same exact one that I'm using in there. It works great. So as far as the LEDs on the top go, I think this is a 14-inch light bar, same cheap little super thin, like cheap eBay quality little light bar. They actually, believe it or not, pull out a lot of output. As far as for like this Jeep driving at night, we've been out at night and it lights up the entire street or the entire park wherever she's driving with it. For switches, I essentially did 2 off-road switches right here. One is off-road lights, the other one is Sasquatch lights. The Sasquatch lights being the top light bar. And here's they are ridiculously bright. So when she's driving at night, even during the day, they're blinding. So cheap light bars do the job. I wanted to kind of imitate the look of the aftermarket fenders on the JK, so I did the studs all the way across as well. I measured, so it's all the same distance basically. So some of the footage that I do have left over, I'll just throw it up on here as a time lapse, and this is the part where I did the vinyl on it, and I basically, like I said, I cut it freehand because I tried using a template. It was going to be too much work to transfer it over. So I cut it just with a razor right on there on the vinyl, straightened everything out, and then what I did was I measured the distance for the studs themselves with a razor by putting a small mark on it and following it in the center with a Sharpie. And I did that all the way across, and then I used the tape on the bottom of the step to get the center line and to mock it up so I know where it was going to be exactly. And once I drilled it in there and tapped those screws on their own, I mean, they stayed in there and they're still there. They're still taking the abuse and the beating. This is actually I think a replica of the Jeep badge, the one that is the Arctic edition, so I had to trim it down just a tad bit just to make it fit with the doors opening and everything, so it doesn't get hooked on there. I think it came out fairly well. It looks pretty cool on there. And then the decals, so we named it after Marshmallow from Frozen, the Yeti that's in Frozen cartoon. His name is Marshmallow, so I had these decals made along with her name. Did the same shackle setup in the back with the studs here. This was a little bit easier to do because I could recess this into it, and these have been holding up to some serious abuse, and you can tell here. I'll show you exactly what I did. So I put the studs in there, and then right there is where I mounted them, and I just use huge washers just so they don't get pulled out of there if we actually yank on it or whatnot. But it seems to be holding up. I also plasti dipped the whole tub on the bottom black because it was white and it looked awful. It was getting everything mixed together in one. So I just threw a layer of plasti dip on there just to kind of hide that tub in there. So as far as the taillights go, I left the original LEDs in there that came with it. And the only thing that I did was I painted this bezel to match the color scheme that we were doing. And then the back here, that is, here, let me turn the lights off. So that's just Nightshade, literally the stuff they use on your taillights to tint them. That's what I did on there. I just took this little piece out so that doesn't get tinted. As far as the light bar that comes with it, so this bar, I ended up flipping upside down because they have the holes in here for those ugly ass lights that it comes with that point over the head. I wanted to put LEDs in there originally, but I decided not to. The reason being is because honestly it would just shine in the back of her head and it was just pointless. So we flipped this upside down. We might use this for some reverse lights or something like that, or some more off-road lights later. Okay, so this Jeep still has all the stock electronics in it as far as like the remote control on it and all that stuff. So I did mount the eagle eyes over here and here and basically over here using little L brackets as for rock lights. And then what I did was I took the frame off, like all the metal stuff, and I just painted to match the color. I painted the springs white just to match the color scheme of the Jeep. Now the suspension on it actually works fairly well, but it's rather stiff, but it does work because I see it compressing when she hits some hard stuff. All right, so as far as these shocks that I made here, so essentially what I wanted to do was obviously imitate Fox suspension, and it was kind of an interesting way of doing it. So I cut 1.5 inch PVC and I ended up gluing it like reservoir shocks, and then I just got some tube. This is actually not a tube, it's a rod. It's aluminum rod that I got at Home Depot. I capped off the ends here, and after I spray painted them and put Fox decals on, I just threw this rod in here and bolted it to the motor here. And basically what ends up happening is when the suspension compresses, that rod is free to go in and out of the actual tube, and it actually looks like it is working suspension. But the real suspension is these little springs over here inside that hold the axle. So same concept on the front. This was actually kind of time consuming, and try to find a location that works for it so it doesn't get a lot of rub on the tire and stuff like that. This one rubs a little bit at full lock, and when she hits something you hear it hit a little bit, but it's definitely not in the way. So this is just bolted on from the inside of the hood, and same thing here. I just went right to the bar and I riveted that one into that suspension bar. As far as like music goes, I know it comes with that cheap speaker slash whatever USB, and you can actually use a SD card in here. This is kind of annoying to use, so what we do is we actually throw in like called a Braven speaker. It's one of these waterproof speakers. We put it underneath the hood. It's actually got fairly good sound, and the bass sounds fairly decent. So we ended up painting the wheels. I did black. Originally I wanted to do little white accents in here. I decided not to because I figured it's gonna get beat up, and the amount of time that it's gonna take me to do that is gonna be ridiculous. So I ended up just painting them gloss black, and then I drilled again holes in here, and I put the little studs in, and you can see that they're actually holding up pretty well. What I did, and we beat them against curbs and all sorts of stuff. You can see that they're all scratched up and beat up. So it's kind of protecting the wheel from damage in a way. These take the brunt hit of it, and what I did when I screwed them in, I used a drop of super glue on each one, just so it stays in place, so it doesn't get thrown out. And through all that beating that we've done on it so far, they're all in there. They're all holding on. All right, so as far as future plans for the Marshmallow are probably going to be a trailer, so she could take her little ATV with her to the park. The next thing I think we're going to be doing is possibly some reverse lights on it, and eventually we would like to convert the electronics on here to something more legit. This is a little slow. It's definitely slow to get started. Climbing is not the best thing for it. Even with 2 batteries, the motors are a little lacky. It's enough for her now. Hopefully I answered most of your questions. If not, like I said, hit me up on Instagram, MohawkDave555, or just drop a comment down below. I will try to answer any of the questions that you guys might have. And here's the promised footage at night, just to show you the lights.